Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into the fascinating world of Cold War jet aircraft with a build of the iconic Republic F105 Thunderchief. Known affectionately as the Thud, this was the workhorse of the Vietnam War, designed with supersonic speed and to carry a bomb load that rivaled that of World War II era heavy bombers. The first stage of this build then is to paint the interior of the jet exhaust. And once that's painted, we can then start to assemble these sections together. And you can see I've got a clamp there, just holding those nicely and adding a bit of glue on the outside. Then we turn our attention very quickly to the cockpit area, which is a lovely grey, and also doing some pre-assembly on the wings. Now I wanted to show you this in real time because these flap areas were really difficult. Now this is the aileron, and that was nice and straightforward. Balance that on like so, and then get a clamp. But then we've got the flap section, which goes on afterwards, and you'll see how tight a fit this was. I also thought the construction was a little bit weird in that you can see there's that separate section that's been cut out of the flap, and that goes in. But yeah, here you can see the difficulty. I've added the glue and it's just really tight. You've got to get that spot on. I mean, granted, I'd rather it be tight than falling all over the place and having a massive seam. But yeah, it was a bit fiddly, this one. Yeah, once it was all sorted, we were pretty good. And then we just needed to glue that cavity, and there you can see that piece that slots in like so. Then we turned our attention to the undercarriage. So this is the nose section. And you can see we've got some really nice detail in there. I was quite happy with that. And then we're filling the nose with liquid gravity. Now this is not mentioned in the trumpeter kit in the instructions, but tricycle undercarriage aircraft is worth putting some nose weight in. Then the fuselage halves came together, and then we started attaching the wings. And there you have it. Then we started work on the external pylons and ordnance, building those sort of on the sprue in some cases, just to keep it all together. And yeah, there you go. Before you know it, you've got something that looks like a Thunderchief. There's a little bit of a gap though on that wing, and this Vallejo plastic putty I think is brilliant. You've got this precision applicator, and you'll see this in a second. Enables you to get just the finest little bit of putty just along there. And all I had to do was get a cotton bud to wipe away the excess, and it filled up that hole perfect. I didn't need to do any sanding after that. So yeah, really recommend that. We're almost ready for some paint. So first thing we want to do is mask up the canopy section. And you can see I'm using a cocktail stick to press the tape right into the contours of the plastic, and then using a very fresh blade, carefully cutting along that line. And then we peel away the excess, and you can see you've got a lovely mask there. Then using some putty, we're filling up the cavities there, and we're ready to start priming this. Now I went with a black base, which is pretty standard for me, particularly on the underside with all of the panel lines and rivet detail. I think having a black base is a great way of really highlighting that detail. course, the priming task also helps us to identify any areas that need any further sanding and provide us with a nice clear surface to add our paint to. There you have it, looking pretty cool. For the paint then, I went with Hataka's Vietnam era Cold War Jets set. And we're working on the underside grey. And you can see how the black base gives us a nice area to work on. Then we turn our attention to the dark tan. Using some putty to create that line there. And there we go, getting the paint on there very nicely indeed. Using the putty to mask that up. And then we're going to turn our attention to the green. And we've got the medium green and we've got the dark green. And we're going to go with the dark green now. And it's decal time. And you can see we've got our different decal placement there on the instructions. And what I wanted to show you here is the decal work in real time. And this, by the way, is my new camera setup. So I hope you like this, because this is how most of my build videos are going to be going forward. And as you can see, that gives me access to both hands. So the decal is in the water, and we're applying some micro set, pretty standard for me when it comes to decals. And then we're putting the lid on, making sure I don't knock that over. Believe me, you only make that mistake once. And they were just checking the decal, and depending on which decals you're using will depend on how quickly that works. With these trumpeter decals, you can see, obviously this is real time, we needed a little bit longer in the water, but there we go, it was ready to go. So we're applying this to this section, and obviously you've got a double curve to worry about. So we're going to use two techniques. We're going to use micro set, but I'm also going to use a, micro sol, that comes later, but we're also going to use a hairdryer to almost melt the decal around that area. There we go, that's what's going on here. You need to be really careful not to overdo this, because you don't want to melt the plastic and or the glue, just enough to make sure that the decal forms to the contours. And yeah, then we're getting the excess micro set away with a cotton bud there, and we are done. We're now ready to seal this, so we're getting a gloss varnish on over the whole surface, because we're going to start adding some panel line wash. And you can see I've done that there. And the riveting detail on this kit, some might say it's a little bit excessive, but personally I think it gives a really good contrast, interest, and makes for a really nice model. So yeah, we've got the pin wash from Ammo. That's just going in there. And then we get our odorless thinner, and we're literally just wiping that excess away. You can see how easy that is, and what we're left with is a really nice, well-pronounced panel line. So she's looking pretty good. One of the things I noticed is that the putty, there you go, it didn't all come out. So I had to break the canopy off to remove that. And you saw the mask that I'd made earlier. I reapplied that, and yeah, we were back in business. But there we go. There's the underside, all panel washed, and you can see the tan panels there. I'm going to show you what I did with the green. So this is our green colour, and we've got that on the palette here, and we're mixing it with some white to lighten it, and then we've got some water there to create a very dilute, almost wash. And we're just picking out some random panels, and you can see how much lighter that is. And then we're going to get a cotton bud to mop up the excess water, and you'll see that will leave a nice effect on the panels. Lovely. Then we're on to the ordnance, and they go onto the racks like so. And then the final stages, we're looking at the gun door there. We've got the ladder on already. Doing a bit of dry brushing and chipping effect on those steps. And before you know it, we are done. So, ready for the big reveal? Very satisfying moment of revealing the mask. And here you have the finished kit. Well, I really hope you've enjoyed this one. Let me know in the comments what you think, things I can work on, things that you liked, so that I can learn from each video to bring you newer and better ones. But yeah, I'll shut up now and let you enjoy the finished kit.